Hey everyone, welcome to another Divhunt video. In this video, we are going to talk about how to turn components into a widgets so you can have more flexibility when working with components. But before we begin, I highly advise you to go and watch our previous video about the components so you can learn what are the components and how they work on Divhunt. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so for this example, we're going to use this static FAQ section. First of all, we're going to turn it into a component by right-clicking on it, then convert to component. Then we can open our components layer here and select our FAQ component. Now let's turn this component into a widget. How can you do that? Well, simply on this top bar above your component, hit a right click, then click on the variables, and here you can set up a variables for your component. So let's add one variable here. Let's name it title, which is going to be title of our whole section. And here in this dropdown, you can select a different types of fields that you need for your variables. For this one, we just need simple input field. So let's hit confirm. And here you will get a bunch of options connected to your variable. Since all of these fields are pretty self-explanatory, I won't go into depth about these fields. And now let's add another variable. This time, let's call it description, since this is going to be our section description. And let's select this multi-line text field, hit confirm, and we can hit save here. Now, before we start adding some content, we need to connect our variables, which we just created, to the actual fields inside our section. So let's select our title here, go to the settings, open a variables pop-up, and this time we are opening a widget dropdown. So let's open it, and here you can see the two variables which we created inside our widget. So let's select a title one, hit save button. Since we haven't inputted any value, it's currently empty, and let's connect our paragraph as well. So again, widget dropdown, description this time, hit a save button, and our variables has been connected. So now we can go to our component at the homepage to see what we have done. And if I select it, you can see here into the layers that it got this W label, which represents that this component is actual widget. And now you can also see that I cannot interact with the items inside my component. That's because the widget system prevents me from interacting with the items inside my component. This is very useful when you're building a website for your client and you don't want your client to mess up the structure that you've made. So you will just predefine some fields in which he can input some data, and that data will be displayed inside a component. If you go to the settings panel, you can notice this edit content button. If I open it, I will get this pop-up with all the fields that I've created inside my widget. Now let's input something like my heading. And for the description, let's input something short like my short description. If I hit save button, you will see that my heading and my paragraph here are pulling data from the widget fields. Now, when we completed this simple part, let's see how can we make these FAQs appear here dynamically and to pull data from our widget as well. So let's go back to our main component here, and let's see into our layers. You can see that this accordion div has been looped 6 times. So let's set the looping to 1, since we want to make this to duplicate dynamically. So now we can go back inside our variables and let's create a new variable. Let's call it FAQs. Here into a type dropdown, let's select a repeater field this time, since we want to make a variable that can repeat itself multiple times. So let's hit confirm. Since repeater field is used to duplicate certain structure multiple times, we will need to define a specific fields inside a repeater variable so our items can pull data from those fields. So in this part that is called fields, we need to add a new field. For the FAQs, we need a question field, which is a simple text input. So let's hit save here. And we would need a answer field. Let's set it here to text area so we can input a multiple lines of text there. Let's hit save button and let's input a default value here. So let's hit add value and you can immediately see those two fields that we created below, question and answer. So let's name it like my question. And let's name this one my short answer. hit a save button, hit save again, and now we need to connect everything. So let's select this accordion div, which was previously looped, since we want to duplicate this div. Let's go to the advanced settings, and we need to use a iterable since we are working with a repeater field. So let's open variables pop-up here, open widget dropdown, and you can see this FAQ which we created. So let's hit save button, and here into a key we can type in FAQs, and now we need to select our question, go to the settings, open a variables pop-up and find our FAQs here, open the dropdown, and these are the separated fields which we created inside our repeater variable. So here we need a question value, hit a save button, and for this paragraph the process is the same, but this time we need a answer value. So let's hit save button, and you can see that now my FAQs are pulling data from the variables. Okay, so now since everything works perfectly, let's go back inside our widget, and inside a FAQs variable, let's input some actual examples here. So let's remove this one and let's add new one. I'll just paste down the content really quickly here. Let's hit save button, and I will really quickly add 2 more examples of the camera. Okay, so now when we have some real examples, let's hit the save button, and you will see that my structure is duplicated 3 times since I inputted 3 different FAQs. Now let's revisit this component on our homepage, and as you can see, here are 3 default FAQs which we set up inside our variable. Now if we don't want these FAQs here, we can simply go into edit content, then go into FAQs variable, and for example we can remove this one if we don't want it here, hit the save button, and that FAQ will be removed. Now you can as well add some different ones, for example my test FAQ, short answer, hit the save button, hit save again, and you will see that I will have 2 default ones and the new one which I just created. Now let's go to some other page, for example about us, and here we can call our FAQ component, but first let's place it right here, and into the settings, into the component dropdown, we can call our FAQ component, and as you can see it will hold these default values, but let's edit it here. Let's input a title, let's call it FAQs, for the description, all answers in one place, for example, and let's add a completely new FAQ above this tree. So let's add another one. Let's paste the content here really quickly, hit a save button, hit save again, and you will see that this component contains different title, different description, and different FAQ blocks from the other FAQ components. And we slowly came to the end of this video. We saw how can we turn our components into widgets so we can have more freedom when working with a component. Thank you for watching, and until the next time, happy building!